Okay. This is the archive of the Wall Street Journal, and it's an important one. And I think you guys should share it around any media you can. A generation of American men give up on college. I just feel lost. It's not just American men, by the way. I would say this is a first world problem. A number of men enrolled at 2 and 4 year colleges have fallen behind women by record levels in a widening education gap across the US. When they say fallen behind, they mean they just haven't entered. It's not like they've actually fallen behind once they're there. Now, men are abandoning higher education in such numbers they are now trail female college students by record levels. Now, we will see how far they're willing to be honest. They won't be, not 100% anyway, because they have to deal with the fact that these guys have had to deal with a hostile environment while they were there. The fees for university have gone to the roof, so the average person can't afford it. And in addition, the women, when they build up debt, they often find boyfriends or husbands who are willing to pay it off. And these guys aren't going to find a woman to pay off their bills for them. Now let's get to it. At the close of 2021 academic year, women made up 59.5%, we'll just say 60, of college students, an all-time high, men 40%, according to enrollment data from the National Student of Clearinghouse, a nonprofit research group. US colleges and universities had 1.5 million fewer students compared 5 years ago, and the men accounted for 71% of the decline. Now, notice both men and women are going into university less, and I suspect that is due to the high cost. But of course, the 71% of men is obvious. Like I said, it's a hostile environment for them. They can get accused and have their lives ruined by some woman on campus because they just kicked out guys out of college at a woman's word. This education gap, which holds at both 2 and 4 year colleges, have been slowly widening for 40 years. Of course, it's been. 40 years ago would have been the early 80s. The 60s and 70s is when second wave feminists got in there. And it's also the time where, about a generation after World War II, when all of a sudden the girls said, well, we don't need the guys. So they started tossing them. And that's when it started happening. That's when all the viciousness at colleges started happening. The divergence increases at graduation. After 6 years of college, 65% of women in the US who started 4-year university in 2012 received diplomas by 2018, compared to 59% of men during the same period. Of course. The next few years, 2 women will earn a college degree for every man. If the trend continues, said Douglas Shapiro, well, it is going to get worse because society's not willing to admit that they are male hostile. And universities are just particularly so because they've become severely feminist indoctrinated. No reversal in sight, of course not. In order to be a reversal, there has to be consequences. You've got to kick the feminist out. You've got to admit that's what's going on. And you've got to change your ways. They've got to change their attitude towards men. And of course, they keep going on about how the women have increased their age, increased the lead over men. So, okay, we'll get down here. Men are falling behind remarkably fast. Not remarkably to me. They're falling behind as fast as I expect them to in a man-hating society. Let's see what we got here, which aims, let's see, Thomas Mortensen, a senior scholar at Pell, I hate when they do this shit, which aims to improve educational opportunities for low income, first generation, and disabled college students. Okay, so they're not going to deal with the problem then, are they? Disabled college students, they're just going to be thrown in with the women, and the women are going to take it. Let's see, American colleges, which are embroiled in debates over racial and gender equality. It's not just America. It's Canada too. It's the UK. It's first world countries. And there are no debates as far as I can see. A debate would suggest someone else is arguing on men's side. There isn't. There's just women telling men they're garbage, and young men looking at college and saying, why am I dealing with this shit for? And working on ways to reduce sexual assault. Of course, there you go. Harassment of women on campus. We already know this is a bunch of bullshit. It's just a bunch of lies to harass men and tell them they're terrible. So why would guys want to go there? Have yet to reach a consensus on why slow the retreat of men from the higher education. Can you imagine that was all said in the same paragraph? They're pushing some feminist bullshit lying agenda, and then they can't understand why guys are retreating. Come on. Some schools are quietly trying programs to enroll more men, but there's a scant campus support for spending resources to boost male attendance and retention. Yeah, notice it's on the quiet. Why? Because they can't say it out loud without actually them admitting that men are having a problem. And why do they want men to hang around? They obviously hate them and want them gone. So I'll put this out there. It's because the women who go to college want a high status man to glob onto. So they can either become a housewife, or when they get tired of their career, they can dump it and maybe get a part-time job and live a high status existence on a man. That's why they want men there. They want them to be the suckers. But they won't mention that either. They won't admit to that at all. The gender enrollment disparity among nonprofit colleges widest at the private four-year schools, of course. The more time a guy feels he's going to waste to, building up tremendous amounts of debt and not having a good environment for job work, finding jobs. I mean, he's not going to invest all that time. Let's see. They're just going to tell again. They do a lot of repeating here. Is there a thumb on the scale for boys? Absolutely, said Jennifer Delahunty. So they admit it. She admits it. She's a college enrollment consultant who previously led the admissions office at Kenyon College in Granby, Ohio, and Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon. The question is that right or wrong there? So she's not on these guys' side. They want these guys here, but they don't care about them. So she's admitting she doesn't care if these guys ever show up. So what's their problem? They want it both ways. Ms. Delahunty said the kind of tacit affirmative action for boys has become higher education's dirty little secret. In other words, they're trying to reverse it again, but they have to be quiet about it, because then they would admit that there's the true equality between the sexes. That is, boys need just as much help as girls. Actually, they need more, because again, this woman admits they've got the scales thumbs down on them, and she's kind of all right with it. Practiced but not publicly acknowledged by many private universities where the gender balance has gone off kilter. I'd like to ask these universities, why do you care so much that guys join, since you're obviously hostile towards them? It's unfortunate that we're not giving this issue air and sun so that we can start to address it. It's unfortunate if it's that way because you want it that way. This woman does not want to admit what they're doing to young men. Let's see. At Baylor University, where the undergraduate student body is 60% female, the admission rate for men last year was 7% points higher than for women. The admission rate for men last year was 7 percentage points higher than for women. Every student has to meet Baylor's admission standards to earn admission, said Jessica King Garrity. Okay. However, are shaped to balance several variables, including gender, she says. Ms. Garrity said that she found that girls more closely attended to their college applications than boys. For instance, making sure conscripts are delivered. Baylor created a males and moms communication campaign. Males and moms, not dads. Where are the fathers? They only give a shit about the mother and the family. And I suspect a lot of these guys are probably from single parent, mother driven families. A few years ago, a high school boys on track set, she said, among these messages to mothers in the campaign, Miss Garrity said, at the dinner table tonight, Mom, we need you to talk about getting your high school transcripts in. Race and gender can't be considered in admission decisions in California public universities. Well, it is. These colleges are hostile to the young men and paint them as rapists. So it does. The proportion of male undergraduates in UCLA fell to 41% in the fall of semester from 45%. Yeah, it's getting worse. Okay. We already heard that like 4 times now. We do not see male applicants being less competitive than female applicants. Morgan said, but fewer men apply. Well, there you go. Women are not going to be out competing men anyway in anything. But of course, men don't apply. Of course they don't, because they see it's not in good environment. It doesn't promise guys anything. No one's going to be there for guys when they've got 50 grand in debt and the job market doesn't give them a good job, paying job to pay it off. No one's going to be there for them. They're going to, men are threatened to become homeless. And people call them bums when they live at home. The college gender gap crosses across race, of course, geography and economic background, of course. This is why it's bullshit when they go on about, let's say, keeping, white men down and giving the other races of men a try. Because as you say, being of other races doesn't help at all, does it? Black men, Hispanic men, and Asian men are also not going to college. For the most part, white men, see, this is a problem. Once a predominant group in American campuses no longer hold a statistical edge in enrollment rates. Enrollment rates for poor and working class white men are lower than those of Black men, Latino men, and Asian men from the same economic backgrounds, according to the analysis and census data of the Pell Institute for Journal. Now, I want you to pay attention to what I'm about to say. I'm not about the race. What I'm going to point out is Black and Latino and Asian men should make up the difference by rights. If they cared about these minority races, you would see the gap shrink up. You would say, oh, there's just not many white men here, but there's all kinds of Black men, there's all kinds of Latino men, there's all kinds of Asian men. And so it's back up to 50-50, but it's not. So this has nothing to do about race. I keep telling you guys over and over again, race is a red herring. No college wants to tackle the issue under the glare of gender politics. Of course, they don't admit that men are being attacked because there's nothing wrong with them. They're innocent men that are being attacked because they're men, and they don't want to admit that they're sexist. The conventional view on campus, she said, is that men make more money and men hold higher positions. Why should we give them a little shove from a higher school to college? Obviously, because you terrible people are keeping them down. That's why. Matter of fact, rather than give them an op, all you have to do is level the playing field. You just kick all the feminists out of there and all the hate mongers out of the universities. And then you stop demonizing young men. That would go a long way. But even then, you can't beat the economics. You can't beat the fact that these women who go and get themselves in heavy debt will find family, friends, and husbands and boyfriends to help them out and take care of them. These young guys, they'll get spit on if they're down and out. So there's not much they can do about that, is there? Yet the stakes, well, actually there is. They would actually start fighting to get government subsidizing like they do in civilized countries. Yet the stakes are too high to ignore, she said. If you care about our society, one, and two, if you care about women, you have to care about boys too. Well, why would they say care about women? Just say care about people. You can't care about women without saying that, you know, boys and guys have are underneath them. If you have equally educated members of men and women, that just makes a better society. It makes for better women. No, it doesn't. These women who get higher education, they want men who even have higher status to get together with. Men are the ones who need the jobs, not the women. The pandemic accelerated the trend, no kidding. I won't even bother reading that. The decline in male enrollment, the academic year was highest of 2-year college. They're saying the same thing over and over again. Is there any point reading that? The guys felt they needed to step in quickly. Oh, wait, I better read this. This is important. Let's see. Families' finances are believed to be one cause. Millions of women left jobs to stay home with children when the schools closed in the pandemic. What had I been saying this whole time? What have I been saying this whole time? These women can go and have, how are they looking after the kids? Who's paying? That's right. They've got a husband or boyfriend who's working. And so these women can step out whenever they want. Many turn to their sons for help. Wow. These sons who, let's face it, the colleges don't want them around. People hate them because they're male. And these guys have to go and scramble and find their jobs. And then mommy comes to help from them. I spit on anyone who gives a hard time to a young guy who's staying at home being taken care of by his mother. Because here are these women, these grown-ass women, they get educated and then they go running to daddy. They come running home to husband, and they come running home to their sons who society has dumped. And some of the young men quit school to work, said Colin Caffrey. Yeah, because the daughters, they don't run to their daughters, do they? Because their daughters would be saying, sorry, mom, I'm not interested. I'm taking care of myself. I'm sorry you got yourself into this bind. That's what the daughters would say. Good luck with that, mom. So anyway, like I said, the guys felt they needed to step in quickly. That's right. The guys always have this sense of responsibility, and it's a poor sense. These guys shouldn't have stepped in. They should have said, Ma, you're the educated one. Mom, I'd get spit on if I was staying on you at home with you and you were taking care of me. You're the educated woman. Take care of yourself. It isn't clear how many will return to school after the pandemic. They won't. Once a guy lucks into a good job, or even a job period, he can't afford to give that up. He has no safety net. Why would he go back up on the tightrope wire again? Because again, is mommy going to look after these boys if they go for it, and then everything falls through? Okay. Over the course of their working lives, American college graduates earn more than $1 million beyond those with high school diploma. And a university diploma is required for many jobs, as well as most professionals, technical, and positions of influence. Positions of influence is important. Yeah, well, this is what it's all about. The feminists want the guys out, so they gain all the influence. They want to see the guys working like serfs and have all the women in the influential positions. Of course, this they're not going to admit that, are they? Skyrocketing education costs have made college more risky today than for past generations, potentially settling graduates in lower paying careers, as well as those who drop out with student loans they can't repay. Exactly. Like I said, but guess what? I'll repeat it. The girls, they can go to men to pay their loans for them. And these guys can't. Social science researchers cite distraction, obstacles to education that weigh on more on boys and young men. Look, listen to this. Video games, of course. Pornography, of course. Increased fatherlessness. Now, listen, look at that disgusting bullshit. First of all, video games don't keep guys distracted anymore. They love video games, so what? Pornography, the girls watch pornography too. As fatherlessness, who's to blame for that? Their mothers don't like the men, so they kick them out of the family unit. So they're not going to they're not going to point that out in this article, are they? Men in interviews around the US said they quit school and didn't enroll because it didn't see enough value in a college degree for all the effort, expense required to earn one, of course. Many said they wanted to make money after high school, of course, again, because guys need independence. If a guy's not out of his house, he's still living with mommy, he's spit on. Girls don't have that problem. Let's see. Let's see. Daniel Bryce, 18 years old, graduated. He's decided against college during his senior year, despite earning a 3.5 grade point average and winning $2,500 college scholarship from a local veterans organization. Of course. I'm sorry, these things, they don't mean anything when the guy looks and realizes, there's no safety net. And if I fall, I'm falling hard and I may never get up again. He took a landscaping job for $500 a week. Mr. Browse is a musician, also earned some income from creating and selling music through streaming services. He said, and invest in cryptocurrencies. His parents both attended college. They hope he too will eventually apply. So far, they haven't pressured him, he said. Now, they're pressuring him for what reason, though? Because it's a status thing. They're status chasers. And they want to be able to say their son went to college too. That's a bullshit reason for any guy to enter college. If I was going to be a doctor or lawyer, then obviously those people need a formal education, but there are definitely ways to get around it now. There are opportunities that weren't taught in school that could be a lot more promising than getting a degree. Let me tell you something. Let's say, I am sub to a guy, a man who's, I think he's a professor, and he's on YouTube because obviously he's having a hard time making ends meet at his college, as his degree, as his career. So guys are going to YouTube. There's all kinds of guys on YouTube. So I'm thinking, why aren't you just doing your career? Because their career didn't pan out. So they're bringing the career on YouTube. Many young men who dropped out of college said they worried about the future, but nonetheless quit school with no plan in mind. Okay, that's true. Let's see. Don't care about that. Let's see. I'll let you guys, I'm going to bring this in. You guys can read the whole thing. Jack Bartholomew, 19, started his freshman year in Bowling Green State University during the pandemic, taking his classes online. During the first weeks, he said he was confused by the course material and grew frustrated. Finally quit. I don't know what I'm going to do, he said. I just felt lost. Yeah, online courses are bullshit. That's why you have educators there to educate you. A lot of people would just say, well, just take courses online because of the obvious. They say if you hit a snag or a problem, who are you going to ask? You're going to ask the screen? Now, is Bartholomew's parents and one older sister, of course, have college degrees, of course. Because again, the sister, she doesn't have the same stresses on her, does she? She has safety nets that this young fellow doesn't have. Now let's see. He works 40 hours a week at $5.50 an hour, packing boxes at Amazon. It isn't a long-term job. Yes, it's not looking good. College seems like, to me at least, the only logical path you can take in America. But for now, he said, it's too big of a struggle financially and academically. Yeah. Yeah, the deck has been stacked against this young guy. So what can I say? Now, this is important. Tomorrow's leaders. Men dominate top positions in industry, finance, politics, and entertainment. Of course they do. I'm going to say it so any women who come by hear this. Guys have to gain status. Yes, they have to get status to get the girl, and they have to gain status so that they'll be treated with a modicum of respect from society. Women don't need that. So of course they make their way to the top. Also, when there's an emergency, women turn to men and say, what are you going to do about it? They also hold a majority of tenured faculty positions and run most of the US college campuses. Yet female college students are running laps around their male counterparts. Of course, because the obvious gender bias has put rockets on their feet and lead shoes on the guys. And this is what's going to happen. This is why this is important. What's going to happen eventually is all these old men who shit on the young men coming up behind them to pander to the women in these colleges. They're going to die off or retire. And then all these women are going to take up their positions. And then all that's happening to young men like this is going to get ramped up. It's going to be ramped. It's going to get worse. Because when women get in positions of power and influence, they discard the men. They'll only have a modicum of respect for men who have higher status than them. All these young men will be beneath them, and they'll have contempt for them. You think some things are bad now? Wait another 10 or 20 years. Now, I'm not going to read any more of this. Oh, wait, I'll point this out. This bullshitter. The young men who enroll lag behind among University of Vermont graduates. About 55% of male students graduate 4 years compared. Yeah, blah, blah. I see a lot of guys that are here for 4 years to drink beer, smoke weed, and hang out and get a degree. I don't believe that at all. At all. Said Luke Weiss, a civil engineering student fraternity president of Pi Kappa Alpha at the campus. Sorry. I know guys who've wasted an entire year. I've never known guys to go in and see their money getting racked up and, their debt getting racked up, I should say, and just not seeing the guillotine coming down. Let's see. Female students in the U.S. benefit from support system established decades ago, spanning the period of women struggled to gain foothold to college campuses. They were not struggling. They just weren't interested in the past. And then they got interested, and then they demanded. That's what happened. There are more than 500 women's centers schools wide. Most centers host clubs and organizations to work to help female students succeed. Of course. Of course. And this is why things are the way they are. Let's see. Across all types of institutions, particularly two-year institutions, but all extending the public. Okay, they're just repeating themselves endlessly. Okay. Many young men are hobbled by the lack of guidance, a strain of anti-intellectualism, and growing belief College's degrees don't pay off, but it's not a belief. College degrees aren't paying off for guys. The job market is terrible. And anti-intellectualism, how come that doesn't affect the girls then? Let me add something to this. I would say young guys in high school notice that the girls will avoid guys who look nerdy and do well in school. So that's what I think is the anti-intellectualism there. And lack of guidance. Like, how would you guide young men when you hate their guts? Young men get little help in part because schools are focused on encourage historically unrepresented students. This is a lie, though, because again, the Hispanic men, the Black men, and the Asian men aren't going to universities, are they? Like if it was just the white men, again, you would still see a 50-50 representation because the other races of men would would fill up the slots, wouldn't they? But they aren't. So it's not about underrepresented students. It's about giving free stuff to women at men's expenses. Let's say few campuses have been willing to spend limited funds on male underachievement that would also benefit white men, risking criticism for assisting those with historically held the biggest education advantages. Again, I'll repeat what I just said. Why are they going on about white men? The gender gap wouldn't exist if the other races of men were filling in these slots. They aren't. Has nothing to do about race at all. As a country, we don't have the tools yet to help white men who find, okay, this is nonsense. I'll listen to that. We already know what that is. Let's see. See if we have anything else. So as opposed, let's see, 2008, Mr. Smith proposed men's center to help male students succeed. The proposal drew criticism from women, of course, who asked, why would you give more resources to the most privileged group in campus? Obviously, they're not privileged. This 2008, of course. Men aren't privileged. They have to struggle to get there. And when they fall apart, if things fall apart at the end and they don't get their job, they are tossed aside. Funding wasn't appropriated, he said, and the center was never built. Of course, these liars, these man haters blocked it. What else is new? And the men involved, they just took it like little bitches, or they loved the idea. They're also man haters. There's no bigger hater of a young, low status man than an old high status man. Now, I like this. Donna Brunson. This article either fails to address or refuses to see the real issue. Thank you, Donna. Schools in general, not just universities, have become toxic places for our young men. Yes, she's right. School has become structured in order so as to reward typical female behaviors and punish typically male behaviors. From the time they enter preschool, these are babies, boys are told that they are bad, sit still, don't blurt out answers, color between the lines, etc. Otherwise, we will medicate you. Yes. So Donna, in this simple paragraph, just answered everything that this long-winded article was going on about. Now, of course, take a good look at it. Having taught at college since the 80s, this is John Haynes, I've become to believe that women are more motivated, interested in doing the actual academic work rather than working some angle to make grades. This guy, John Haynes, will then contradict himself. The greatest exception to this, from my experiences, is in engineering. Really. So you're wrong. The guys aren't just there obviously the guys are motivated. It remains male dominated in terms of numbers in my mixed general educational classes. The engineers were almost monolithic in my informal surveys about attending sports events. They didn't. Okay. So this guy is saying he's a bunch of nerds and they didn't like sports. Okay. They were clear about their priorities studying for their degrees. And while not male, notice, but then again, notice he's saying there's not, it's male dominated. So how can he say that the women are more motivated if they don't want to enter these fields? This is a mere 2 days ago, so this guy should know better by now. And while not male dominated, students of architecture and related fields such as have much the same attitude towards their studies. There you go again. So it's not really that men aren't motivated or interested. It all depends on what their degree is, doesn't it? In contrast, non-science, non-STEM majors seem to place greater emphasis on social aspects of college and weren't particularly focused on what field they were in as long as it eventually made money. Okay, so this guy has nothing to complain about. Because obviously guys are interested. I think Wayne Rutman, I think the logical conclusion of these statistics is the problem is college, not men. Yes. Many men these days just don't see the value of most college degrees. They think it's expensive education in an unwelcome environment that won't teach them very much and won't help them. Are they wrong? I doubt it. Yeah, well, it's not, these guys have it right. I don't think I need to go through all of these. Ask a woman, this is from Tim Cridlett, if she expects to marry a man who makes more money than she does. I believe the evidence says most will always answer they do. Ask a man if he expects to marry a woman who makes more money than he does. The answer is likely no. Not likely no, it will be no. Partly because he knows the answer to the first question. Exactly. What that means is that women may feel that if she does not have the capacity or interest to excel in those majors that are more likely to lead to a high paying field, she may be more willing to a major in the liberal arts that don't necessarily promise a high paying job because of that expectation mentioned above. Of course. A man in the same situation, i.e. not able to compete in those majors that lead to high paying careers and who realize that most women want a man who makes more than they do, can't see settling for a career that will not only leave them in debt and poor, but alone to boot. These guys in these simple paragraphs have been saying everything that I've been saying. He, of course, says, yes, affirmative action is a fact of life. Back in the 1980s and 90s, job ads for universities used to read preference give to qualified female or minority candidates. Where the M, and he talks about the EAO, AA, and all this, where the M means minorities and not men. It's the fact that preference can be given to specific groups and hiring by law. Not enough evidence? Come on, man. Yes. Also want to point out this slime bag, this guy, Donald, who said, really curious about these gestures of people keeping mentioning in favor of young women. And then he mentions, because I do remember her professor, he's someone his daughter. I do remember her professors tried to take advantage of her sexually and other harassment from male classmates. Okay, this guy's a scumbag. The male classmates came on to her. She saw them as beneath her because they were low status, they didn't have degrees or anything. So she called it sexual harassment. Fathers like this make me puke. You'll be surprised how I find some of the women are better in the comments than the men. Rick King, I do not see this as a problem. No one is closing the doors to those men. This is bullshit. Era, ain't no barriers, no discrimination. Of course there's discrimination. Edith Valentine points it out. How can you call affirmative action for women at college's admission as no discrimination against men? Yeah. not to mention the intensely hostile to boys K-12 education system and the extreme hostility of college campuses to men who must go all through almost Maoist style re-education courses to learn that they are the lowest of life forms. Wow. Edith Valentine, that's a woman who's saying this. Welcome to our campus, greeting. Also known as Learn Not to Rape Women courses for every single man. And of course, no due process if you were target of false accusation by a woman. I should have just come down and read this instead of the entire article. Otherwise, enjoy your college career, or maybe you live in another planet or something. Yeah. So thank you, Edith, and screw you, Rick. Okay, I've kept this long enough. I think this is an important article. I think you guys should, if you would be so kind, share it on all media platforms. I mean, this stuff should be archived and kept. It's gotten terrible. It is terrible now. And it's only going to get worse. Goodbye, everyone.